Well, the new Secretary General of the African National Congress, ANC, Fikile Mbalula, beg your pardon, has condemned sanctions against Zimbabwe. According to Mbalula, his party would intensify assisting neighbouring Zimbabwe to recover from decades of economic downturn and massive brain drain. Mbalula says Western nations should not use sanctions to deepen the pain and the impoverishment in Zimbabwe. Mbalula, who served previously as South Africa's police minister, says the ANC would not be swayed to turn against its longtime ally, ZANU-PF. This comes at a time when many Zimbabweans in South Africa are uncertain their future in the country as their exemption permits would expire in June next year. Hopewell, a Zimbabwean journalist, joins me to unpack this latest development. A warm welcome to you, Hopewell, and thanks for joining us on the news.
Thank you for having me.
Now, Hopewell, what do you make of the statement made by the new Secretary General of the ANC that they do not subscribe to regime change in Zimbabwe and they're openly supporting the ZANU-PF government? What's your take on this?
I mean, it's very unfortunate that the new Secretary General of the African National Congress, which is the ruling party in South Africa, is saying that he does not subscribe to democracy taking place in Zimbabwe simply because ZANU-PF, the ruling party in Zimbabwe, and the ANC, which is the ruling party in South Africa, are allies. Unfortunately, they've become allies not just through the liberation struggle, where they fought side by side, but through how both countries have been run, the looting of public funds, corruption. So when Zimbabweans raise the issue of corruption in Zimbabwe, the South African ruling party, African National Congress, defends what is happening in Zimbabwe because they are equally doing the same. And the most unfortunate thing is to use sanctions against Zimbabwean political elites by the American government to justify the failures by the Zimbabwean government. Right now in Zimbabwe, central hospitals, which are referral hospitals, do not have paracetamol, but the political elites in Zimbabwe are driving Land Cruisers. The biggest hospital in Zimbabwe only has one maternity theater. 2,500 Zimbabwean women are dying every year giving birth. This is not caused by
But Hopewell, if you ask ZANU-PF officials in the government in Harare, they will tell you that the cause of all the sanctions is the cause of all the problems in Zimbabwe. It's sanctions. It's a convenient boogeyman for the ruling ZANU-PF. So what are really the implications of sanctions? Why can't the West try something else and maybe give it a try? So the ZANU-PF won't have a convenience excuse for as an answer for all the problems in the country.
Well, you called them the correct word, the boogeyman. I personally don't subscribe to sanctions. I don't think they work. You're right that they are used as an excuse for the corrupt rule in Zimbabwe. But sanctions are an external factor that has been imposed by other countries, which are essentially saying, we do not want you to come to our country. We do not want you as the president or as a minister in a government that kills its people, that jails its people. Right now, as I'm speaking to you, there is an opposition member of parliament who has been in jail without trial for more than 6 months. This is the kind of stuff that we expected from the Africa of the 1990s, but is happening today in Zimbabwe. And these are the things that are attracting sanctions. The banning of opposition political parties from holding rallies, the stopping of the main opposition leader from simply planting trees on International Tree Day. These are the kind of things that attract sanctions. And it's within ZANU-PF's hands to deal with these issues. But they are brought up as and when it's convenient for the ruling party to explain why it has failed to deliver on the mandate that it says it has been given by the citizens through the ballot box. And it's unfortunate now that the South African ruling party, through its new Secretary General, Fikile Mbalula, is now saying they won't even recognize democracy in Zimbabwe, which is wrong.
I mean, they're openly taking sides and supporting the ANC. Now, Hopewell, you've been so vocal in calling out the authorities. You did talk about the state of the health institutions being in a state of comatose, to put it lightly. Now, what is the opposition doing? How would you describe the level of democracy? I believe, I know the Zimbabweans are going to the polls next year. Would you say members of the opposition are going about their campaigns easily? How would you describe the level of freedom and democracy, and of course the state of things in Zimbabwe as we move towards the elections?
Well, at the moment, it's like we're living under a state of emergency. The opposition, excuse me, the member of the leader of the opposition is not allowed to hold rallies. Each time he applies for the right to hold a rally, the police turns him down. Last week, he tried to plant trees, as I said earlier. They stopped him from simply planting trees. The voters' roll is in a mess. We have requested the voters' roll as citizens, as allowed by the Constitution. The Zimbabwe Electoral Commission has refused to deliver the voters' roll. So in terms of the 2023 elections, it's looking like it's going to be another repeat of previous Zimbabwean elections, where elections are rigged. There's contestation, you go to a captured judiciary, and that's the end of story. ZANU-PF continues to rule the country. And so it's supported by its allies in the region, like the African National Congress.
And that brings me to my last question, Hopewell, because no country is an island. The SADC countries are complaining about the economic, the influx of economic migrants from Zimbabwe because of, they say, its sanctions as SADC as a bloc. The African Union also has a peer review mechanism looking at the quality of governance in African countries. What can we do as a continent? How can we make sure that, you know, Zimbabwe follows the African Union Charter, you know, respect freedoms and all of these things? Because it seems to be like old boys club, and they're just looking the other way when things don't work their way.
The solution is there. The solution is there. The African Union and the SADC, which is the regional body for Southern African countries, they need to make sure that the constitution, the Zimbabwean constitution, is adhered to. The SADC and African Union election protocols are adhered to. The tragedy about most African countries, and specifically Zimbabwe, is that the laws are there in place, but they're simply not followed. And the protocols, the election protocols for SADC and for African Union are there, but they are not followed. And unlike in West Africa, where they seem to be a little bit more pushy towards errant countries that do not follow their constitutions, in Southern Africa, they don't care. As you have seen yesterday, the Secretary General of the biggest and oldest political party on the African continent, the African National Congress, actually says that he does not believe in democracy taking place in Zimbabwe. He says they don't subscribe to the notion of regime change. Regimes are changed at every other election if they fail to deliver on the mandate that they would have been given by the citizens. That is the nature of democracy. But here we have the biggest economy, or second biggest economy after Nigeria, which is South Africa, telling us that they will not support a democratic process in Zimbabwe. So that makes it very difficult for Zimbabweans. And as I've said, we have a member of parliament who's been in prison for 6 months without trial, and nothing is being done. It's like we're living in the 70s.
We really need a lot to do. We have quite a lot to do on the continent in terms of deepening democracy. I'd like to say a big thank you to you, Hopewell Chinono, and congratulations to you on winning the Qatar Emir's Anti-Corruption Award. I can see it in your background, so keep doing the great work.
Thank you very much.
Yes.